What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Her Lounge podcast. Today we have a very special guest. I had been telling you guys a lot about me having someone that is running for the HISD trust as a HISD trustee, and you guys know how much I speak on education and the importance of education in public school, and you guys know that I'm pretty passionate about it and feel like there needs to be some change done. So I am so happy to have Fe. Now, pronounce your last name for me.
Bencosme.
Is that your married last name, or is that your maiden last?
That's my maiden name.
Wow.
Yes,
Bencosme.
Yeah. Bencosme. My father was from the Dominican Republic, and, you know, I always say I was born a Bencosme, I'm going to die a Bencosme.
Okay. So we're so happy you came on to join us today and just kind of give us a little bit of insight of, like, what really, I guess, goes on and like what to expect. So I want to start off with kind of, first of all, tell us a little bit about your background, like where you're from, you know what I'm saying, how you got to Houston, etc.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, you know, where I'm from, I'm a native New Yorker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I grew up between the Virgin Islands and the Dominican Republic. My mother was from the VI, my father was from the DR.
Okay.
Soon after I was born, they decided for whatever reason they needed to go back to the Caribbean, and I'm glad I had that experience. But I also went back to New York City for my high school education. I went back to the Caribbean. I did college there, and after I graduated from college, I pretty much went around the world. I did a master's at George Mason University. I majored in English, ended up teaching in the Middle East for a few years for Houston Community College System, and that's how I came to Houston. After my contract there ended, I came here to Houston. I was teaching college English to students who were coming out of HISD primarily, and you know, it was sad. It was sad what I was encountering. Children who could read, they could sound out the words, but they couldn't really engage with the text, not at the level that they needed to be. And because they couldn't engage with the text, they really couldn't, you know, come up with their own ideas, their own opinion about what they were reading, and then they couldn't express that in their writing. So that's where I am. That's how I got here.
So can you put the mic a little bit closer to your mouth? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So did you teach HISD at all, or no?
Did I say HISD? HCC, Houston Community.
HCC. Okay, so
Houston
you taught
Community College System.
So
yes.
You taught it at the university, I guess. What would be
the
college level?
Yes, the college level. Yeah.
And so then that's where you notice that there seems to be some kind of disconnect with graduates to going into, I guess, the college level reading and so forth.
Yes. Yeah.
So now, tell us exactly what it means to be running for the HISD trustee. What exactly does that mean?
So a trustee has the responsibility with 8 other people, because there are 9 of them, right? The trustee has a responsibility for setting up a vision for the school district. Okay. What kind of school do we want to be? What kind of students do we want to produce? Now, that's already in place, and that rarely ever changes. So a trustee is going to go in there, and they're going to continue to hold up that vision. But how do we get to that vision? What are the steps that we're going to take to get there? And how are we going to support the superintendent to make sure that he or she is following the steps that they need to do to carry out the vision? That's what the trustee does. The trustee passes a budget. The trustee makes sure that he or she creates policy that helps the superintendent carry out these goals. And if you, say, a parent, you have an issue at the school and you want it addressed by the board, then that policy that the board has created, that's the policy that's going to inform you, that's going to tell you, okay, this is how a board makes a decision, so this is how I need to frame whatever issue it is that I have. When I go to that board, I need to frame it according to these guidelines.
And right now, what exactly is in place for the vision for the schools? Because I just don't see a vision, period. So I just would like to know, what is the vision?
Yeah, so a lot of people get confused with the vision, the mission statement, and then the day-to-day running of a school. the day-to-day running of a school district is really not the board's job.
Okay.
That is the superintendent's job along with the principal.
Got it.
They decide on how they're going to run the school day to day.
Okay.
Again, that board, they're saying, okay, we want to produce students that can go out into the world and be able to do these things. These are the kinds of citizens that we want them to be. These are the kinds of employees that we want them to be. These are the kinds of parents that we want them to be. These are the kind of military, what do I call them, soldiers that we want them to be. And then, again, it's up to the superintendent to work with his schools to make sure that they are meeting those goals, that they are producing those kinds of students. Now, the superintendent reports back to the board, what is it, every month to say, you know, this is where I am in meeting these goals. The board might say, listen, we need to make some adjustments here. We don't see this happening. We don't see that happening. And all of this is based on testing, of course. So what is it that we can do to help you? How do we need to change some of our constraints that we may have put in place? What is it that we need to change to help you make sure that you are producing, your schools are producing the kinds of students that we need?
Okay, so when you say producing, because that's a strong word to use for children, you mean just to be able to read, write, do basic math, you know, and because I will be honest with you, I am a product of a public school system, obviously. I think a lot of us are, you know. I don't know that when the other day, I had a conversation with my husband. I said, you know what's so weird? I was like, I never realized that they used to keep me in this little section in my middle school with other students who were the kids that seemed to not be at risk to maybe like we were the good kids, and it's almost like they didn't want to put us with the general population. And I said, and if you think about it, that's a prison. That's like you have the murderers together, the child molesters at another level, and then it's like, you know, you have all that, right? There's levels to like everything. And then I felt like, wait, so they kept us here, and it was because we weren't allowed to kind of be with everybody else, because I went to a school that had a lot of gangs. And so I thought to myself, so is this how they do things? Another thing was, as I've been volunteering, I've been so observant. A book that I recommend that you read that was actually referred or suggested to me by one of my patrons is called Government Schools Are Bad for Your Kids. And when you kind of read that book and then you're in a public school settings, you realize that it is very drill sergeant, walk in the line, do not get out of the line. You know, we all do this together. You know, you don't do things different from anybody else. And one conversation that Juan and I had was, you know, what's so weird is that I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and there was no way that I was going to put my 5-year-old in preschool when she was 2, right? But I put my 2-year-old in preschool this year. Why? Because I saw the difference between both my girls, and I saw that Penny was easier to sit with, and she'd be willing to reciprocate whatever I was giving to her, versus my 2-year-old was not willing to. She wanted to do her own thing. She wasn't interested, but Penny was. And so I was able to do a lot at their age. I was doing a lot more educational things with Penny. And so I saw early on that I needed help. Like, okay, I feel like she's going to end up we're going to have to go to preschool early, and she and I are going to have to work together. And, you know, now she's at a private school, my baby is, but I saw that. So as a teacher, you know, in a public school, when you see that your kid is not learning, I don't understand why we can't just come up. And again, this is because I see something different, right? And like you're saying, the superintendent has to come in and see like what is needed, what is necessary, and then they work with the principal to implement it. And then, you know, you start kind of seeing what works and what doesn't work. I've heard so many mixed, I guess, opinions about the new superintendent, but the current school that I actually volunteer at, I'm not sure if she was just being nice because we're all volunteers, but she's actually happy with what he's coming in to do in her school and the changes that they're making in her school. So versus you see these tweets coming out from everybody saying that, you know, he's just messing up everything and he's not fixing anything. He's getting rid of stuff, like the whole rumor about the library schools. That's not true.
From what I hear, no, it is not true. Okay, yes, there are a lot of schools in the system, the HISD system, that don't have libraries, and they haven't had libraries for some time. That is something that I was not aware of until this whole thing blew up. Now, why is that? Well, I think part of it has a lot to do, and other people will say the same thing too. It has a lot to do with the fact that children, our students today, they're accessing information differently. Me personally, I don't like it. I wish all kids were accessing books in a library and they weren't accessing reading materials on a Chromebook. That is just me personally. I think there's something to be said for holding a book in your hand and turning the pages and smelling it and you know, running your finger along that line. There is something that all of this exposure to screens is doing to our brains. And I think that is something that you might have spoken about at some point on one of your podcasts.
Yes, I did.
It's so yeah, I don't like it for that reason. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the libraries were being underutilized, and I guess a decision was made. It's going to be better to use the library in this way, to use that space in another way, as opposed to just having it sit there underutilized.
Which is a great segue into one of the questions that was asked, speaking about public schools. Books. Someone on my Discord asked, why not go back to textbooks? The kids already spend plenty of time in screens. Textbooks also help parents understand what's being taught and help them. Secondly, so these are two questions. Consider we no longer use textbooks. Where's the money that's being saved on purchasing these going? So where is that money going if they're no longer purchasing books?
So I can only imagine that the money is still going to publishers they're just not publishing books anymore. They're actually publishing ebooks that the kids are accessing through Chromebooks.
Got it. Okay.
Which, you know, every time a child logs into that Chromebook, everything, every action, every site they visit, everything is being tracked. And that's another story. I don't know that, you know, parents realize how much of their child's behavior is being tracked on these Chromebooks, and how is that information being preserved? How is it being stored? How are they going to use it beyond just, oh, Johnny needs help in this area, or Johnny needs help in this particular area of reading? How is that information going to follow Johnny for the rest of his life? And what is that information going to determine? How is it going to determine how Johnny's life is going to be? Are they going to say, well, because of this information, because of these scores, because of this behavior, Johnny, you can only be this. You can only be that. So that's my concern with textbooks. And a lot has been, the e-textbooks. And a lot has been written about that. But I forgot your first question.
What are they doing with the budget for, I guess you just said that was the reason.
Yeah, so it was the second question.
I think she said, why not go back to textbooks?
Honestly, because there are interests that are way bigger than you and I that want those Chromebooks in schools. And I'm not the only person who would like to see them gone. I'm not the only person running for trustee who would like to see them gone. But it's going to be a fight. If we're going to get rid of those Chromebooks, it's going to be a fight.
Well, one of the things I think this should be looked into is that ebooks don't cost as much as books. There's a price difference completely. So where is the rest of that money going?
Where's the rest of the money going?
The other thing is this is maybe that something that could be looked into as well, because if you're going to be purchasing ebooks, I think ebooks should be taught a different way, in the sense that more kids learn more from active learning. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to do an ebook, they should have some type of curriculum of active learning, so that they're able to kind of track, like, oh, this kid is keeping along, like answering questions of what they just read. Those can be implemented into those. But for the most part, if you're saying that you're taking the money from the textbooks and putting it in ebooks, and ebooks cost way cheaper than it is to ship and get books, where's the rest of that money going?
And binding was expensive back in the days when, you know, I'm a little bit older than you, but so back then, so I remember, like, that was such a big deal for you to be careful when you opened the book growing up, right? And they would give us, book covers to put over the books, right? The brown bag, exactly. You know, where you would protect that. You know, where you would protect that.
36.
Yeah, I don't know if they still did that when y'all were, I think that was a cool thing to do, like, like early 90s, like 90,
okay,
or 89 or yeah, because I used to see my aunts do it, and so I thought it was so cool, because I remember I couldn't wait to be able to do that to my textbooks, because you had reading books in elementary school, but you didn't get to, like, it was like something you checked out and you kept it or whatever. It's the craziest thing, because I thought that I never really thought about how public schools just really are. I don't feel anymore that they're in it for the children at all. Like, I don't ever think that. I used to think that, of course, why wouldn't they want you to be proficient in reading? I don't understand why we don't see it a problem, or the school district doesn't see it a problem, that we have kids in the third grade still not being able to read. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense that you could even go into middle school and still not be able to read. It doesn't make sense to me how you're going into high school and you're still not able to read.
And you're graduating.
And you're still not able to read. So all that is very confusing to me. That's one. I am a sign language interpreter, and the deaf education is also not. That's a whole other realm of things that I feel are not there for them. And also children who have autism or any of that who also need education, I feel like those programs need help as well. Like, they're just not also catering to children with disabilities either, you know? And obviously the ones that are more severely disabled, that's a whole different ballpark. But at one point in life, I thought that I wanted to be a teacher, and so I did the program through high school.
Sounds like you'd be a great teacher. You'd be a great trustee.
And so I worked with the special education department, and I saw how hard it was for the teacher and the support for that teacher, and how she did a lot of stuff by herself, right? We're talking about in the year 1996, 97, 98, you know, around that time, right? Now when I go and volunteer, I can't believe that there's absolutely no aid in the classroom. I don't know if there's any of the other schools maybe do have them. And then maybe this is another question I have for you. So does even though you're in the same school district, because this is one thing I don't understand, why is it that you're in the same school district, but some schools are considered better than others, and they have waiting lists? My daughter's on 3 waiting lists for 3 public schools that are in our area that she can go to. So do you know, or can you explain why that is and how that happens?
I think the way it happens is that the better schools attract, I guess, the better teachers, and those schools that might have some more, I don't know, challenges, populations with more challenges, those are the schools that probably don't attract the better teacher, the more seasoned teachers. They might get the new teachers, the ones who aren't necessarily, they haven't gone through the whole certification process. They might have gone through an alternate certification process, in which case these may not necessarily be, you know, your best seasoned teachers. Yeah.
Because one thing that I've noticed, being that I only seem to live in gentrified areas, and one of the things that I've noticed from there is the minute, and I'm telling you about, the reason I'm telling you is the schools where my child's on a waiting list, those schools are in sections where it's become gentrified. Mm-hmm. So the high rises are there, mm-hmm. The pretty coffee shops are there. Mm-hmm. So those schools have been cleaned up and rezoned also, mm-hmm. So that the children who are supposed to be zoned there, mm-hmm. that are in these high rises or in these pretty, beautiful mm-hmm. homes, are able to attend these schools, yes. which are performing way better. Mm-hmm. My concern is, okay, around the corner from where I'm currently volunteering, I already saw the sign that says there's new, a whole new community that's going to be built of high rises, mm-hmm. literally behind the school. Mm-hmm. The school I'm currently at is one of the lowest performing schools mm-hmm. in HISD. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I just want to literally witness that school mm-hmm. on as to what they're going to do to improve it, because I get it. A lot of parents with a little bit more income usually decide to send their children to mm-hmm. private school, mm-hmm. right? The concept of private school is the reason we send our children there is because we're paying, so we have the say. Mm-hmm. And I wish that more parents who pay taxes, right, mm-hmm. would see it that you're doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. You're paying also for that school in your area, in mm-hmm. your community to run. Because it is still a business, but your mm-hmm. tax dollars is paying for that school to run. So whether you have, I guess before, because I didn't have children, I didn't see it like, I don't care, whatever, my tax, I live here, but yeah, I guess I pay taxes, it's included in whatever your mortgage, sure, whatever, I pay it. So I never cared, but now that I have kids, obviously it matters to me very much, because I'm going to have to pay for two. I'm going to have to pay for a private school and public school,
But also, just so that way you can answer both of them too, there's also that class of people that doesn't even know about any of that stuff. Like more people that are like less better off, like mm-hmm. where they're just poor pretty much, because I grew up in that. But like,
me too.
My mom had no clue. Like, she didn't know any of the stuff that was going on, so she just thought, oh, I didn't know that they could rezone. She didn't know anything about any mm-hmm. of that. So, mm-hmm. like, the fact that you have that knowledge is still puts you ahead of a lot more people, because mm-hmm. they're just like, well, I guess I got to take them to this school now, or I got to take them to this school. So they don't even know most of that's going on. So this stuff just happens to them, and their kids are just putting mm-hmm. that, and they're like, well, I guess we're putting them here. But they have no idea about any part of, like, the background, the board of education. They don't know anything about that. Like, my mom she was just too busy working 2 jobs, trying to raise 2 kids, and it was just, she had like no time for any of that to even know what was going on.
And yeah, that's what sucks though. You have to go find a school too. I forgot, someone left a comment and said, well, it takes a parent to be involved for them to find the right public school that's actually performing well. Yes, but then you have single mothers or parents who don't, like you said, your mom didn't have the time. So it's like, no, I'm not going to go look to see which of the school. This is the one closest to me. This is where he's going to have to go,
And why can't we have all schools?
Exactly. Yes, that is my point. Yeah.
So that parents don't have to run all over town looking for the place to send their kid to.
100%.
Okay, so yes, I think right now what we're seeing at HISD is parents saying, listen, I'm paying taxes. You need to listen to me, and you need to implement some of the things that I see the way I see it. Yeah, I get that. And if it were fully funded by well, I guess maybe I'm going into a bad territory there, right? What government is trying to do is they're trying to produce these schools that serve everybody, and they're trying to do it in the most efficient way. government schools don't have the flexibility that, say, a private school does, because the private school is smaller. Sometimes they can bring more staff in because they're paying them less. They may not be paying...
or tuition's higher also.
Yes, yeah, and tuition's also higher. So, yeah, I would like to see a situation where we have schools they're good schools no matter where you live, no matter where you want to send your kid. You should be able to have a good school that is outside your door, that you can walk to, that you don't have to be bused all the way over to the other side of town.
And what do you think it's going to take to get there, Fe? Like, what do you see? Because you're running for such a board that works so closely with the superintendent, what would you like to see? Or what is your goal now that you're trying to run as a person who is trying to make this change in the school district?
So I would like to see us get back to a place where what we're doing is actually educating people and not filling their heads with a bunch of ideas that don't necessarily make them better thinkers, make them better doers, creative producers. That's the first thing that we need to get back to. We need to get back to teaching reading, writing, and reasoning. Otherwise, what kind of person are you going to be? I'd like to see us get back to a place where educating the whole person does not mean that you come to school, I'm going to give you breakfast, lunch, and dinner, burp you and then put you to bed. I'm being funny. But
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Educating the whole person means, we're not just educating your mind, but we're educating your spirit, your soul as well. And I don't mean that, we need to take a religious approach to building up character and integrity in people, but that is something that we need to be doing. Our kids, the culture, I don't have to tell you this, you probably know, there is just so much out there that is so contrary to being human. And our kids are getting it not just outside of school, but in school as well. This is something that I'd like to see gone. I'd like to see it gone, and I'd like to see us just focusing on educating a person with what it is that they really need to be human.
Yeah.
To be productive in this life.
So, like, one of the main problems I see with schools, and I don't see it changing in
a while.
Well, because the biggest problem is that you have a school system that is 20 years behind, and you have a new culture of with AI starting to be implemented, where we're about to jump into something that it took us 20 years with computers to get as far as we are now. And I think with AI, that jump that we took in that 20 years is then going to be like a 5-year gap. Like, I think we're going to be as far as we are from the 20-year gap to, like, in 5 years, we're going to be a lot further along. And if the school system hasn't moved in 20 years, what do you think is like the key points that we need to hammer down in
to catch up?
Trying to catch up.
Yeah.
So when you say AI, you mean being able to function within AI, or to be the person that creates the content that goes into AI?
So what I mean is, we're still in an education system that has barely started to implement ebooks, and this is like integrating technology, and we're barely catching up to that. Or it's like, okay, let's start getting them ebooks now. But it's like, okay, we're 20 years ahead, guys. Like, there's the damn computer can read to you now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're way past this. We need to catch up. Like, we need to catch up in a rapid pace. The curriculum needs to be looked at, and if they need to implement ebooks where it is interactive, so that they can actually grasp what they're reading, not just I'm reading a screen, that needs to happen faster. There needs to be a faster uptake in new technology to help them catch them up, because outside of that, we're still back here trying to catch up to where kids are like learning very bad things on their own at home, and they're learning at a different pace than we are in school, where at school it's just a chore. I have to go and I'm not learning anything because I'm learning a lot more outside of school. So the school system needs to catch up in a fast way, because in the next 5 years, I feel that we're going to be a lot further along than even now.
But when I think of AI, I just think of this tool that is no different than, say, a computer. And yes, these kids, they can learn to use a computer, AI, whatever. They can use that and learn to use it very easily, very quickly. But you still need to have those reasoning skills that will help you to read and decipher what it is that you're reading. That's what I think we need to be focusing on. If you can do that, if you can think, then you can figure out how to do all of the other stuff.
Or also if you're taught to think for yourself, then I think that when hopefully, right, you would think that when you grab the iPad and you're looking at it, that you would understand or have, more sense to it. But I guess you're trying to say that technology is moving forward. In schools, we're not moving forward with technology, correct? That's kind of what you're saying?
So in the sense that I think there's where the miscommunication is. When I'm saying that AI is here and then also we have technology, we're not at schools. They should be able to teach the kids how to utilize these tools to help them understand those skills a lot faster.
And that is going to come. I do believe so. I've been present at community meetings where Mike Miles has said that he is very committed to making sure that kids coming out of HISD are able to function in an AI world. He is very, very committed to that.
Right, but I think the major thing, and this is one thing that needs to be streamlined and it needs to be somehow figured out, is because we live in an information overload society, there needs to be a way to be able to filter out certain things within those programs, whether it's computers, whether it's AI, to be able to teach these kids where to go to get the correct information.
And
because
that's
using
my
that
concern,
using that to then, okay, it's not only that I'm taking in information, but I'm taking in the right information so that I can 10x these skills of reading, math, arithmetic, so that I can use these in the common world going further. But what's happening is like you have people over here teaching all kinds of stuff on YouTube and stuff, but they're not experts in it because they don't even know. So like, how do we filter those out? I think those need to be looked at a lot further, so that those can be taught into schools, because those are going to be the things that that's going to leapfrog a lot of these kids to the next step, because they're going to be able to start like, oh, well, I just have to go to this and I have to do these certain things to learn, oh, I can do that. And then they start reading on their own, because then they can start going through little programs and different books that can actually expand their
Well, I think there's already a lot of educational programs on the iPad or on the computer. So, because I did them, Penny has them on her iPad, and that's kind of what we did at the beginning. But then maybe this is just the old school in me, right? When I was growing up and computers were first introduced, they were this big, right?
Yes.
And our keyboards were very noisy, right? But what we went in there for was to do comprehension of the book that we read, and it was kind of the introduction to computers, right? This is what you're going to have to do in the future. You're probably going to have to read some stuff, answer test, whatever. Now, I still think we need manual and technology together, and it was taught to me that way. I think we're getting away more from manual and just go look for it on the computer. Does that make sense? Or go ask Google or go, you know what I'm saying? Before, we had an encyclopedia where we had to go, and it's funny, there's this comedian that said that their parents couldn't afford the entire, to buy the entire encyclopedia. So you'd have A, B, and C, and D, and then you'd have to go borrow the other letters from your friends because, they were so expensive. And it's true, because I remember my mom, but before, before she went back to school, she cleaned houses, and a lady was getting rid of them. And I remember we got them, and I was just like, oh, I was like, people have these, we have these at school, but we didn't have them at home, So I think technology is good and kind of not good for me.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool, and it shouldn't do the thinking for us, which is my concern with, again, the Chromebooks, the laptops, and possibly even AI. It shouldn't do the thinking for us. We should be able to direct the thinking of those machines. I'm putting this information in there to, you know, do whatever it does so that it can spit out this document that I created.
Yeah.
My concern with AI is, and Chromebooks, is if we load everything onto these books, onto these machines, anybody can go in there, and this may sound familiar, like 1984, right? If you're familiar with that book. I mean, anyone can go in there and change the information. And when someone who is less discerning than you and I, someone who doesn't have that background knowledge, a kid, for example, they go onto a computer, they type in, give me the history on whatever, they're going to get what was put in there that may not necessarily be accurate. But, and that is my concern with modern technology. I'm thinking of an article that I saw in the New York Times, which I don't read anymore, in 2011. And it was about a very, very pricey private school in Silicon Valley. This is Wharton School, where all of the people who make a lot of the technology live and send their kids to school. Wharton School in Silicon Valley, you will not see a single computer in that school. You will not see a single screen in that school. The picture for this story is of this nice, beautiful young lady. She's on her back on a desk. She's got a book and she's reading it. Wharton School tells their the parents of their kids, you know, limit screen time at home. These are the people who make these machines. Now, why don't they want to expose their children to it? But they've got
other children.
They've got other children exposed to it.
Well, I was going to say, but there has to be a happy medium. Like, I understand the books. Like, the books is fine, but my thing is, like, it's... When I'm saying about integrating the two, it's because if we can't figure out how to utilize these tools, because, like, yes, you do need the underlying base skills to, like, be able to utilize them, but there has to be a way to use them in a way where it's, like, we're not going to stop progression as far as, like, with this technology stuff, because it's only getting better, and it's actually... So these things and having to understand these things will tell us what skills they need to learn, because there's a lot of skills that are going to be taken away because of these tools. And so how do we know what to teach the kids if we don't know what's being taken care of already? Because at some point, yes, reading and all these things, that's what we need. Those are the baseline things. Those are the baseline skills. But if we are teaching kids to do stuff that's already being taken care of outside of that, they won't know what fields to go into, what things to learn, because then at the end of the day, you're just taking a course that you're learning something that doesn't even apply, like, later on for them.
But you're saying, like, at a high school level or elementary level? Because I think elementary is foundation. For me, kindergarten is foundation. So let's just say you have a kindergartner. How would you?
How many different things do they teach within a day? There's different things that they all try to cram in. All these different things at an elementary level, right? I think some of those skills, like reading, instead of doing it for an hour of the class, maybe expand it and switch it up between, like, maybe twice a day, just at different hours. And, like, they should be honing in on more of those baseline skills rather than some of the other things that we don't even probably use. Like, you know, like the little, like you were saying, like arts and crafts and stuff like that. Depending on if they need that, there needs to be certain things in there that we might need to hone in on until we can catch up.
But that's what we conversed about, where you yourself said that's kind of hard to do because every child learns different. So let's just say.
If we that's what I'm saying. If we do 2 hours instead of 1 hour, you're able to now work with those kids on the reading 2 hours out of the day rather than just an hour scheduled block. So then you can actually start pinpointing where the pain points are for different kids, because they only have so much time in a day for each kid. But if you expand the actual necessary skills that we need, those baseline skills, we need to. So instead of giving them a variety of like, we need to learn these 8 skills before we can hone down on like elementary skills and like, okay, what are the base ones?
What skills are these? You just need to learn to read, and then once you can read. Well, yes, you need to read and to reckon your numbers, right? But you need to read, because once you can read, you can leave a child alone with books for days on end, and they will teach themselves after that. They will build up their own schema. They will build up for themselves a context. And that's what's lacking in a lot of our kids today. They have no context for understanding world events. They have no context for understanding change that's happening before them, how it impacts them, how it's going to impact the future potentially. You just need context.
At what level do you think reading is like? At what level do you think now they can read on their own? What level? Do you
4th grade.
No, but like what is the baseline of reading for you to be like, oh, they can learn on their own? Which level is that of reading?
She just said 4th grade.
No, 4th grade. But what does that entail? Like, okay, what kind of reading do they have? Like, what does that mean?
You're at a 4th grade level reading.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So you can, I don't know, you
understand,
sound out the word,
comprehend, you can read full sentences, you can recognize a sight word, you can understand. You're basically have full comprehension of what you're reading. That's what reading at a level is.
They're interacting at the level? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
And so what happens is, as they age, as they become better, stronger readers, the texts that they're engaging with become more and more challenging, more difficult, and on and on and on and
That's
on.
why you have also like AP English, you have, magnet programs. It's for those that are able to excel in their reading skills. Now, for example, there is a curriculum and a program for every age group. So for example, for kindergarten, you have to at least be able to recognize 21 sight words. That's it. But if you think about it, the brain of a little kindergartner can take way more than 21 words. So now when you get into 1st grade, which is really weird, here's where it doesn't make sense, okay? Now, by the time you're in 1st grade, you're expected to read. So how can you read if you're only introducing 21 words when there's 100 sight words? See how there's a disconnect there. So that's the problem. So, and also you have to remember, we're talking about kindergartners, right? So a teacher, they only have an attention span of this small, for one. And then 2, public schools don't have 10 kids. They have a maximum of 30 children now.
Which is why the
in a classroom
bar is set so low.
Exactly. So now schools have changed a lot. Trust me. Since I've started to volunteer, when I walked into the classroom, I said, holy smokes, how does this man handle
30 children?
All these children in here, and they're all kindergartners. I'm like, oh my God, I bet when he gets home, he is happy, because there's like, you're done. So expectations, and I don't know if it's the same for every school district, so I'm just speaking about HISD. I don't know what it is for Spring Branch or anything like that, but for HISD, they're expected to learn to be able to count to 100, only know 21 sight words.
That's very low.
And that's very low. I mean, there's 100, and how are you going to read in 1st grade if you only know 21 sight words? Do you see what I'm saying? So, which I find that.
And, I know people are going to say, well, I work, I'm busy, but,
parents have to read to them. That's a lot to do with it.
It has a lot to do with it.
That's the reason why I'm volunteering. These are children that don't get read to. And that's why it's so important for you to at least read 20 minutes a day to your children. Even if they're not paying attention and they're doodling or doing something else, because that's what my 2-year-old does, right? I'm reading. She didn't care what I'm reading about, right? But she's listening and she's hearing. She's still hearing subconsciously. Somebody's talking to them. Somebody's reading. So for a parent, like you said, like yours, who was always busy, right? And had to work because she was a single mom, right?
Yeah, my mom didn't have a car. She had to walk.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So then it's like a lot harder for you. But kindergarten is like one of the most important grades, which will determine how you do in first grade, which will determine how you do in second grade, third grade. So if we're not attacking it since kindergarten, right? They're trying to get away with even you going into kindergarten. They want to get rid of kindergarten and they want to go just to first grade. So whose responsibility is it going to be to have them reading up to first grade by the time they're into first grade?
It's the parents.
What up, guys? It's producer Juan. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Her Lounge Podcast. If you'd like to hear part 2 of this episode, please join us on the Patreon. Thank you for your continued support and have a great day.